If one were to compile a list of all the brave souls integral to the survival of humanity, one would be remiss to not include one Sage Celeste Cullens. You could scarcely tell by looking at her, but she was now at the age of 47, her exploits too numerous to count. Those who followed her travels would know that they tend to be accompanied by some rather unsettling stories and bizarre rumors. It's difficult to piece together all the facts from her most recent trip to Cairo, but her name was mentioned in a newspaper article describing a most curious, unexplainable midday darkness that lacked any form of natural cause, such as an eclipse or sudden storm. Just one short year ago, she encountered something during her travels that shook her to her very core so thoroughly that she gave up the work she was involved in entirely, and has since settled into the role of museum curator for the Miskatonic University Museum of Arts and Antiquities. The museum was tucked away in the corner of the top floor of an all but abandoned liberal arts building that was built some 70-odd years ago. While the museum never attracted too many visitors, those that did enter its doors had either met with a terrible curse or had played their part in dispelling one or more themselves. The place was filled with all manner of curious relics, a few of which Miss Cullens knew were best kept well out of reach from mortal hands, behind their glass enclosures. Some of the items on display were from Miss Cullens' personal collection. One of the rumors going around the campus was that Miss Cullens had kept a treasured ceremonial sacrificial dagger that had gone missing from the Cairo expedition, but this item had never been seen on display. It was late on a Sunday afternoon, just a little before the time the museum would be closing. Miss Cullens had already begun locking up the back room. She had mistakenly assumed this would be another uneventful day. That was when a well-dressed tall young man with medium-length dark hair walked in, pushing a cart that was fully covered by a thin white sheet. "Excuse me," said the young man. "My name is James C. Turner. I am looking to speak with the curator of this fine establishment. I believe I am looking for one Sage Celeste Cullens." "Alive and in the flesh," said Miss Cullens. "Ah, excellent," replied Mr. Turner. "You see, Miss Cullens, actually, would you mind if I called you Sage?" "Not at all," replied Sage. "In fact, I'd rather prefer it, so long as you don't mind me calling you James." "Well, of course. You see, Sage, there is nothing I find more detestable in this world than having to maintain a false sense of formality. The feeling is quite mutual, James. But what was it you came to discuss? You see, I have with me something that I think you and the museum would be rather interested in obtaining." "Well, I suppose if you brought it all the way out here, it might be worth a look," said Sage. "This is a unique work, an original, chiseled by my own hand no less than 48 hours ago. I can understand if the museum's budget is tight. I'd be more than happy to loan the piece for free, if only for a short time." Miss Cullens could only laugh at the offer. "I'm sorry, James. I really am. But there's just no way the museum could accept anything so modern. Dreams are older than brooding Egypt, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girdled Babylonia." Miss Cullens' curiosity was piqued by that statement, if only for a moment. Something else was off too. How could I have missed it? She thought to herself. Perhaps it had just been a slow day, or more likely this past year out of the field was starting to catch up to her. There was a definite foreboding presence emanating from underneath the sheet on the cart, one that was all too sickeningly familiar. Nonetheless, Miss Cullens bade Mr. Turner reveal the object. The amount of time it seemed to take for Mr. Turner to lift the sheet from the cart reaffirmed to Miss Cullens that her instincts must have been right. She almost demanded Mr. Turner put the sheet back over the cart when it was only halfway lifted, but she did not. Morbid curiosity had always been her one and only weakness, a weakness that had only grown more hardened over the course of time and experience. Though once revealed, she wished she had never requested to view that damned thing. The medium was simple enough. It was a bas-relief depicting an ancient city, one that had most likely been lost to the annals of history. What wasn't simple were certain features of the artwork that should not have been physically possible for any artist to render. The city had more than its fair share of ominous spires, rising up well above the tallest building in the city. What's more, they appeared to move, to writhe, and at times to be in two places at once, in spite of the fact that they had been cast onto a hardened physical medium. Mr. Turner had somehow learned to represent some form of non-Euclidean geometry in his artwork, a practice that was thought to have died out many thousands of years ago, and for good reason. "Just who exactly are you?" asked Miss Cullens. "I do not understand. I already told you. My name is James C. Turner." "No," insisted Miss Cullens. "Before that." Mr. Turner took a step back in shock. "You have a terrifying way of cutting to the core of what a person is thinking," he replied. "It is quite often in my dreams that I get a good look at my body, and in those dreams it is not the body I have now. I do have some sense of whoever that person is in the dream, but once I've awoke, that all disappears like a fading mist. All that remains are the memories of what I have seen. Look, just forget everything I've said up until now. How much do you want for the sculpture?" "I never said anything about price. I just need to make sure it is displayed. It is most imperative that it is placed somewhere where more than a few inquiring minds will see it." "I'll give you 25,000. That's my final offer," replied Sage. 25,000? If I didn't know any better, Miss Cullens, I'd say you'd gone mad. There's a great deal of desperation in your voice. What is it that you know that I do not? There's a great deal of desperation masked by yours. That thing you've created is more than just a little dangerous. I've seen others like it all too recently for comfort, and once glimpsed by anyone remotely weak-minded, they will fall utterly within its grasp, just as you have. You would be wise to leave it here and forget your dreams. I don't know why, Sage. In spite of my own troubled concerns, I feel this work must be protected at all costs, as if my very life and soul depended on it. It's okay, James. All artists with the true soul of a poet are bound to respond to these types of malignant influences. Even more so in your case, as you have a clear past connection to the archaic abomination that has created this influence. You are not the only one in your shoes. Now listen to me carefully. Take a deep breath and consider my offer. I am willing to pay you $25,000. That is more than what is left in the museum's annual budget, but I am more than happy to pay that price. You probably completed this work in a rather short period of time, yes? I'm almost ashamed to say, said James. The completion of this piece took less than half an hour. For the first time in over 30 years, Sage Celeste Cullen's blood ran cold, and her face turned bone pale. You poor young man. What evil has possessed you so? No, don't you dare even entertain that thought. Just hear me out. You spent very little time on that piece. $25,000 is certainly a fair price for less than half an hour's work, yes? I will most certainly not, Sage. I have a few hunches about what you have in store for it, I'll find someplace else to display my works. Works? Just how many sculptures like that one have you made? Why, at least several dozen at this point, but I could swear I've lost count. My dreams have been getting far more vivid as of late. There's quite a great deal of inspiration to work with. I've been so busy with my hands that I've been running myself ragged. My sculpting goes on so late into the night, I barely even have the time to dream anymore. I have this gnawing fear. No worse, a glimpse of an image from a dream. It will show me everything I will ever create, and from that day forward, I will sleep no more. Oh God, you have to help me, Sage. I can't let this go, no matter how much I want to. Miss Cullens could see everything so clearly on Mr. Turner's face. While he had entered the room a calm and collected man, his nerves had already worn down to nothing. His eyes darted around the room, through the fingers on the hand he had placed over his face, in one last desperate attempt to calm himself. Miss Cullens now knew he was too far gone to be saved. "It is so unfortunate that this must be done," Sage uttered. "Paying for a crime you have yet to commit, driven by an impulse not of your making." It was a clean hit, just below the sternum. Mr. Turner was too distracted by his own worries to see it coming. While Miss Cullens had not been at the site of any major finds for quite some time, she knew that all of her past exposures had made her a likely target for all things related to the ill omens of the eldritch world. And for that very reason, she always kept the sacred jewel-encrusted dagger that saved her life back in Cairo close at hand. "Sage, why?" wheezed a pale and soon-to-be lifeless Mr. Turner as he fell to his knees, the dagger still pinned to his chest by Sage's precise handiwork. "I already told you, you young fool. Don't make this any worse than it has to be. This is all my fault, you see, for failing to finish what I started in Cairo. I spared my life, and it cost you yours. Please, just rest now, and know that in the next life, your decisions will be all your own." A relaxed smile overtook James's face as he closed his eyes and fell limp to the floor. At that time, most people would have been mourning over the loss of someone so young. Some would have their fair share of concerns over cleaning up the stains from a massive pool of blood, such as the one that spread across the museum floor from underneath James C. Turner's corpse. Others would be attempting to find some way to dispose of the murder weapon, but there would be no time for any of that. Miss Cullens needed to phone an old friend, one who could assist with sealing away the body.